Rain pattered on the tin roof that night, the Wyoming cabin holding us in its quiet grip. Lena sat across the scarred wooden table, her straight life a steady line I'd never crossed. We'd shared this isolated ranch house for months, chopping wood, brewing coffee, building a friendship that felt like home. But then she leaned forward, eyes on her mug, and whispered, "What do women taste like?" My heart thudded hard. The air thickened with rain-soaked earth and unspoken weight. Lie to her, I thought. Keep it light. Save what we had. Or be honest. Lay bare the truth of who I am. And risk everything in this place where judgments echo like wind through the pines. Vulnerability bloomed raw in my chest, pulling me open. No map for the ground shifting under us. Her curiosity hung there, genuine, eyes meeting mine without flinching. What if this shattered our rhythm? Or worse, what if it pulled us closer? I couldn't look away. That's how it started. Secrets simmering just below the surface. We'd found this place by accident, a weathered cabin on the edge of a sprawling ranch in Wyoming's high plains. Dust clung to everything. The porch rails, the truck's fenders, even the air after a long day. I moved here 2 years back, chasing the kind of solitude that lets you breathe deep. As a woman who'd loved women since I could name it, the wide open spaces felt like home. No crowds, no judgments pressing in. Just me, tending the small garden out back, mending fences on weekends, and letting the rhythm of dawn chores ground me. The sunrises here painted the sky in bruised purples and golds, and I'd sit with my coffee, feeling the world's weight lift a little. Lena showed up last spring, answering my ad for a roommate to split the rent. She was straight as the highway stretching to the horizon. Dated guys back in her small-town life in Montana, talked about ex-boyfriends with that easy laugh of hers. Blonde hair tied back in a practical ponytail, hands calloused from waitressing and helping her dad with hay bales. She needed a fresh start after a bad breakup. Said the city felt too tight. I liked her straightforward way, how she'd chop wood without complaint, stacking it neat by the shed. Our days fell into a pattern. I'd wake early, brew coffee strong enough to cut the chill, while she slept in, emerging rumpled and ready for whatever shift at the local diner called her. But there were hints, subtle as the first crack in dry earth. The way her gaze lingered when I'd stretch after a hike, muscles aching from the trail, or how she'd brush past me in the narrow kitchen, her shoulder grazing mine, and pause just a beat too long. I'd catch myself watching her too. The curve of her neck as she washed dishes, water droplets tracing her skin. It wasn't overt, just a quiet pull, like gravity in the empty spaces between us. I kept it tucked away, respecting her straight line, my own heart guarded but open to the friendship we'd built. Evenings were our time. After the sun dipped low and the crickets started their chorus, we'd sit on the sagging couch, feet up on the coffee table scarred from years of boots. Talk flowed easy at first, about the ranch hands' gossip, the elk we'd spotted grazing at dusk. But lately, her questions edged deeper. She'd ask about my past loves, not prying, just curious, like piecing together a puzzle. "How'd you know?" she'd say, voice soft against the crackle of the fireplace. I'd share bits, honest but light. The woman who taught me to dance under stars, the ache of goodbyes. She listened, chin on her hand, eyes reflecting the flames. That night, the storm rolled in, slow wind rattling the windows like impatient knuckles. We were in the kitchen, rain pattering on the tin roof, the kind of sound that makes the world feel smaller. I'd just finished drying the last plate when she turned from the sink, drying her hands on a towel. The air hummed with something unspoken, heavier than the humidity. "I've been thinking," she started, hesitating, her cheeks flushing under the dim bulb. Then it came. "What do women taste like?" Her words landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading fast. She looked straight at me, not joking, not backing down. Straight women don't ask that, I thought, but there she was, genuine confusion in her eyes. My pulse quickened, the room shrinking around us. I set the plate down, hands steady, but inside, vulnerability bloomed. open, inviting whatever this was. It's not something you describe easy, I said, voice low, meeting her gaze, like salt on skin after a long day, or the warmth of breath in winter. Personal, real. She nodded, stepping closer, the space between us charged. I didn't push, just let the moment breathe, my own heart laid bare. That question hung there, pulling us into uncharted ground, her straight world tilting just a fraction. As she sat across from me, knees almost touching, the confusion settled in, thick as the gathering dark outside. Those nights after her question stretched long, the cabin wrapping around us like a secret. We'd linger at the table, coffee going cold, the rain easing into a steady drip from the eaves. Lena's eyes held mine, searching, and I let her see the raw edges of me. No walls, just the quiet truth of who I was. Vulnerability felt like handing over a piece of my heart, but in that shared space, it bound us tighter. She leaned in, her breath warm against the chill, and started talking. Not about the question, not yet, but about the cracks in her own life. Her voice dropped low, confessing how her last boyfriend had left her feeling hollow, like a fence post rotted from the inside. I listened, nodding, my hand resting open on the table, inches from hers. The wood grain under my palm felt rough, grounding as her words filled the room. Our routines wove us closer, each day a thread pulling taut. Mornings, I'd rise with the first light filtering through frost-laced windows, boots crunching. Gravel as I checked the garden, potatoes pushing through soil, carrots hidden like buried hopes. Lena joined me sometimes, her hands in the dirt beside mine, fingers brushing soil from leaves. The earth smelled rich, damp, alive, and in those moments, tension hummed low. She'd laugh when mud caked her nails, but her gaze would flick to my arms, strong from hauling feed, and linger. I felt it, that unspoken pull, like wind bending grass before a storm. Evenings brought the kitchen alive again. Me chopping onions that stung my eyes, her stirring soup on the old stove, steam rising thick, the sizzle of butter in the pan, the clink of spoons against bowls. Proximity turned simple acts intimate, her hip bumping mine as we moved, the heat of her body cutting the draft. I didn't pull away, letting the contact spark, my own desires flickering like embers. She carried her straightness like a well-worn coat, comfortable but starting to chafe. Over those talks, I'd hear it in her stories, dates with men who never quite fit, the expectation to settle into that life. Everyone just assumes, she'd say, tracing the rim of her mug, voice edged with something new. I challenged it gently, not with words that pushed, but questions that invited. What if it doesn't have to be that way? I'd ask, my tone soft as the fading light outside. Her assumptions cracked subtle, like ice thawing on the creek. She'd pause, fork midway to her mouth, and the air would thicken, charged with what she wasn't saying. I shared my own path then, pieces of it laid bare in the firelight. How I'd first kissed a woman under a harvest moon, her lips tasting of wild berries and freedom, the fear that followed, sharp as barbed wire, but the pull, stronger, undeniable. It wasn't a choice, I told her one night, our knees touching under the table. It was like breathing, essential once you knew. Empathy guided my words, no judgment, just the weight of my experiences offered like a hand extended. Her eyes softened, reflecting the flames, and she'd nod, absorbing it. I saw the shift in her, small but real, a flicker of doubt in her straight world, like a shadow crossing the sun. Hints of her conflict emerged slow in the quiet hours. She'd withdraw mid-conversation, staring out at the dark fields, her fingers twisting a napkin. I don't get it, she'd murmur, more to herself. Why does it feel different hearing you talk like that? Her voice carried a tremor, genuine, as if the ground under her was shifting. I felt her struggle, the internal storm brewing, and opened wider, sharing how confusion had gripped me once, too. A weight in my chest, like unspoken rain clouds. We listened then, truly, the silence between words, heavy with validation. Her confessions poured out. The loneliness of fitting a mold that pinched, the curiosity that scared her. I mirrored it back, my vulnerability a bridge. "It's okay to not know," I said, my hand covering hers briefly, skin warm and real. She didn't pull away. The cabin held us in that deepening, the rural quiet amplifying every heartbeat. Wind whispered through the pines outside, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. Our talks turned rawer, vulnerabilities shared like tools passed hand to hand. Her fears of judgment from her old life, my aches from loves lost to distance. Tension built in the domestic weave, her laughter brighter when I'd tease her about burning toast, my pulse quickening when she'd lean close to taste a spoonful of stew. Straight assumptions faded further, challenged by the empathy we built, brick by brick. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in deep indigos, we sat on the porch steps, blankets draped over our shoulders. The air cooled fast, stars pricking the vast black. Her head rested near my shoulder, breath steady. "That question I asked," she started, voice hushed. "It stuck with me." My heart thudded, open to whatever came next. The moment hung, ripe, pulling us toward the edge. I turned to her, eyes meeting in the dim light, and nodded. Vulnerability led me there, ready for the experiment that would change everything. The night felt alive, waiting. Her words lingered in the cool night air, pulling us from the porch into the cabin's warmth. I stood, heart open, and led her inside without a word, the door creaking shut behind us like a held breath. The living room fire had died to embers, casting a soft glow on the rug we'd bought at a flea market, faded reds and blues, worn from our feet. Lena followed, her steps hesitant, but she didn't back out. That question of hers, "What do women taste like?" echoed in my mind, genuine curiosity laced with something deeper, unspoken. I turned to her, vulnerability raw in my chest, and met her eyes. "If you want to know," I said, voice steady but soft, "I can show you. No rush, just if it feels right." She nodded, cheeks pink, the straight lines of her world blurring in the dim light. We sat on the couch, close enough that the heat from her body cut the evening chill. My hand found hers, fingers lacing tentative, skin rough from her diner shifts, warm against my calluses from the garden. I didn't push, just let the moment build, my own desires flickering like the last sparks in the grate. "It's about trust," I murmured, leaning in slow, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her breath quickened, mingling with mine, carrying the faint scent of the tea she'd sipped earlier, chamomile and honey, sweet and grounding. Our knees touched, then our shoulders, the proximity turning the air thick, charged like the moments before a summer storm rolls in over the plains. I guided her gently, my vulnerability a quiet invitation. "Close your eyes if it helps," I whispered, my free hand brushing her cheek, thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Soft skin, a little flushed, and she leaned into it, eyes fluttering shut. The world narrowed to us, the creak of the couch springs, the distant hoot of an owl. Outside, I tilted her chin up, heart thudding heavy in my ribs, and pressed my lips to hers. Soft at first, exploratory, like testing the temperature of creek water in spring. She tasted of salt and nervousness, her mouth hesitant but opening under mine. No pressure, just the slow unfold, my tongue brushing hers in a gentle ask. The intimacy bloomed, sensory and real, the warmth of her breath against my neck, the faint tremor in her fingers gripping my shirt. She responded, tentative, her hand sliding to my waist, pulling me closer. The kiss deepened, curiosity turning to something hungrier, her straight assumptions cracking under the weight of it. I let her lead a little, feeling her explore, the way her lips parted further, tasting me back, a soft sigh escaping her. It was like the first rain after drought, soaking in, deep, unexpected. My body responded, heat pooling low, but I kept it gentle, vulnerable, sharing this without demand. Her free hand tangled in my hair, pulling just enough to send a shiver down my spine. The room filled with the sounds of us, soft breaths, the rustle of fabric as we shifted. Outside, wind picked up, rattling the windows, but inside it was just this, her mouth on mine, discovering the taste she'd wondered about. When we broke apart, her eyes opened wide, confusion flickering there like lightning on the horizon. She touched her lips, fingers trembling, and pulled back a fraction. That I didn't expect, she whispered, voice thick, staring at me as if seeing something new. The accidental truth hit her then, sparking in her gaze, genuine, raw, the straight world she'd known tilting off its axis. I nodded, hand still in hers, open to the storm in her eyes. It's okay, I said, empathy flooding my words. Feelings don't always fit the boxes we built. She exhaled sharp, leaning her forehead against mine, the warmth of her skin an anchor. Confusion swirled, but so did something else, a spark of recognition, accidental and profound. We talked then, words tumbling in the afterglow, the fire's embers popping soft. She confessed the whirl in her head, how the kiss felt right in a way nothing with men ever had, like coming home to a place you didn't know you missed. I thought I was straight, she said, voice breaking a little. But this, it woke something. I listened, vulnerable, sharing how my own discoveries had come in waves, crashing unexpected. No judgment, just the quiet hold of empathy, validating her shift without rushing it. Her identity cracked open, the accidental taste revealing layers she'd buried under assumptions. Tears welled in her eyes, and I wiped one away, thumb gentle on her cheek. The moment stretched, intimate, building a bridge over her confusion, but doubt crept in at the edges, her withdrawal subtle as she sat back, arms crossing over her chest, the high plains night pressed against the windows, isolating us in this revelation. What does this mean? She asked, voice small. The try-fail cycle starting, curiosity pulling her forward, fear pushing back. I squeezed her hand, open still, but felt the tension coil. Our shared space, once easy, now hummed with unspoken questions, leading us into the doubts that would test everything. The morning after broke clear, sun slicing through the curtains like a blade on fresh snow. Lena rose early, slipping out to the porch without a word, her boots thudding soft on the boards. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee mug warm in my hands, the steam curling like unanswered questions. She'd kissed me back last night, explored with a hunger that cracked her straight shell, but now denial wrapped around her tight as barbed wire. She sat on the steps, knees drawn up, staring at the frost-kissed fields, stretching endless. I felt the pull to join her, my heart open but aching with the mix, joy in that shared spark, fear it might flicker out. Vulnerability sat heavy in my chest, processing the tenderness we'd touched, the confusion it stirred in both of us. What if this pulled her under, drowned the friendship we'd built? I breathed deep, the scent of pine and earth grounding me, and stepped outside. She looked up as I approached, eyes shadowed, like clouds blocking the sun. Last night, it was a mistake, she said, voice flat, pulling back into herself. Denial hit quick, her words a wall slamming down. She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans, avoiding my gaze. The rural quiet amplified it all. The wind whispering through dry grass, no one around to interrupt her retreat. Isolation pressed in, making her struggle feel vast, like the empty horizon. I nodded, not pushing, just letting my own mixed feelings spill soft. It doesn't have to be, I replied, sitting on the step she'd vacated, the wood cool under me. But if it felt wrong, that's real too. Inside, emotions tangled, elation from her touch, worry for the storm I'd seen brewing in her eyes. Open as I was, it hurt to see her withdraw, but empathy held me steady, validating her need for space without closing off. Days blurred into a rhythm of avoidance, our cabin turning into a maze of careful distances. She'd take longer shifts at the diner, coming home late with grease on her apron and exhaustion in her step. I'd tend the garden alone, knees in the soil, pulling weeds that gripped like her doubts. The isolation out here sharpened everything. No city noise to drown the internal churn, just the howl of coyotes at night, echoing her turmoil. One evening, she tried normalizing it, setting the table like always, plates clinking against the scarred wood. "Pass the salt?" she'd ask, voice forced casual, as if the kiss hadn't happened. I'd smile, hand it over, our fingers brushing accidental, sending a jolt through me. Mixed feelings surged, hope in these small returns, frustration at the pretend. I processed it openly in quiet moments, staring at the ceiling beams, heart vulnerable to the ache of wanting more while fearing the break. But tension built in the shared spaces, sensory and sharp. The kitchen, once easy, hummed with it now, her cooking beside me, the sizzle of meat in the pan masking quicker breaths. She'd reach for a spice jar, arm grazing mine, and freeze, cheeks flushing like autumn leaves. I'd feel it too, the heat of her nearness cutting the draft, stirring memories of her lips on mine. Rural life forced the proximity, folding laundry on the couch, our hands folding sheets that smelled of sun and soap, eyes meeting accidental over the fabric. Isolation amplified the strain. No escape in crowds, just us and the vast land pressing our struggles inward. She'd pull away then, muttering about checking the fence, boots crunching gravel as she fled to the fields. I let her go, processing the push-pull in my chest, empathy for her denial warring with my own longing, open and raw. Validation came in stolen moments, fragile as first frost. One afternoon, rain trapping us inside, she sat at the table, peeling potatoes, knife flashing steady. The room filled with the earthy scent, water dripping from the roof in steady plinks. "I keep replaying it," she admitted suddenly, voice low, eyes on the peel curling away. "The way you tasted, it scared me." Denial cracked just enough, her withdrawal easing into confession. I set my own knife down, leaning forward, vulnerability laid bare. "Scary's part of it," I said, hand open on the table. "For me too, first times. But feeling it, that's truth pushing through." She nodded, a tear slipping, and for a beat we sat in that mutual listening, the confusion shared like the storm outside. Empathy bridged it, validating her accidental awakening without demand. Her straight facade wavered, the try-fail cycling on, pulling close in words, failing back into doubt. Yet the cycles wore on us, rural solitude turning internal battles outward. She'd snap at small things, a misplaced boot, the coffee too strong, denial fueling the edge. I'd absorb it, processing openly in the garden, dirt under nails like anchors for my mixed heart. Nights, she'd toss in her room, floorboards creaking while I lay awake, the wind rattling panes like her unrest. Attempts at normalcy faltered. Shared meals where silence stretched thick, her gaze flicking to my mouth before darting away, heightened tensions sparked in every brush, passing in the hall, her shoulder against mine, breath catching. Isolation made it relentless, no buffer from family or friends to dilute the pull. But in the quiet validations, like her hand lingering on mine during a late talk, hope flickered amid the confusion. One night, as thunder rolled distant, she broke down at the table, head in hands. "I thought I knew who I was," she whispered, voice cracking. The cycle peaked, denial crumbling into raw doubt, her straight world in pieces. I moved close, arm around her shoulders, feeling the tremble, my own vulnerability, a steady hold. Empathy poured out, validating the accidental truth she'd tasted. But the crisis loomed larger now, emotional storm building, pulling us toward confrontation in the dark. That breakdown at the table marked the turning point, her tears falling like the first drops of a downpour. Lena's hands shook as she gripped the edge of the wood, knuckles white, her straight identity cracking wide open under the weight. "I can't pretend anymore," she choked out, voice raw, eyes meeting mine with a desperation that twisted my gut. The facade she'd worn so long, dates with men, easy assumptions, shattered right there, pieces scattering like dry leaves in the wind. I slid my chair closer, vulnerability flooding me, open to her pain without a shield. My arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her in, her body collapsing against mine in the dim kitchen light. The scent of rain-soaked earth seeped through the cracks, mixing with the salt of her tears on my shirt. I held her steady, whispering, "You're not alone in this. Let it out." Empathy poured from me, validating the accidental truth she'd uncovered, no rush to label it. She clung tighter, sobs muffled against my neck, the physical closeness igniting something fierce between us. Our breaths synced in the quiet, her warmth seeping through my sweater, stirring the embers we'd kindled that first night. Emotional walls dissolved, her confessions spilling fast, how the kiss had unraveled her, making every past touch with men feel flat, like echoes in an empty canyon. I nodded into her hair, my own heart exposed, sharing the terror of my first realizations, the fear of losing family, the isolation of hidden desires in a world that didn't bend. It feels like the ground's giving way, I said, voice low, my hand stroking her back in slow circles. The intimacy deepened, her fingers tracing my arm absent-mindedly, sending sparks through my skin. We stayed like that, bodies pressed close, the rural night wrapping us in its hush, amplifying every shared heartbeat. But complications hit unexpected, like a sudden squall over the plains. The next day, her phone buzzed with a call from her sister back in Montana, words sharp through the speaker, judging the phase Lena had hinted at in a late-night text. "You're throwing away everything for some confusion?" The voice cracked, laced with conservative fire, the kind that burns slow in small towns. Lena's face paled, handing me the phone with trembling hands, but I shook my head, letting her face it alone while I stood by, empathetic anchor in the storm. External judgments pierced her fresh wounds, amplifying the doubt, her straight past clawing back. She hung up, collapsing onto the couch, the weight of a family expectations crushing her revelation. "They think I'm broken," she whispered, curling into herself. I sat beside her, thigh against thigh, the leather creaking under us, and pulled her head to my shoulder. "They're scared, too," I offered, vulnerability raw. "But this is yours. Real, like roots, pushing through rock." We dove deeper into her fears that afternoon, rain lashing the windows, trapping us in the cabin's close quarters. She paced the living room, boots thudding on the worn rug, while I sat on the floor by the hearth, knees drawn up, open to every word. Self-discovery terrified her, the what-ifs piling like snowdrifts, losing her job at the diner if whispers spread, the isolation of coming out in this conservative stretch of Wyoming, where Sapphic truths hid like coyotes in the brush. "What if it's just curiosity?" she asked, stopping to look at me, eyes wide with the abyss. "Or worse, what if it's more, and I can't go back?" Her voice broke, the accidental taste from that kiss haunting her, pulling her from the straight path she'd trod so sure. I rose, closing the distance, hands on her arms, feeling the tension taut as fence wire. "Fear's the shadow, not the truth," I said, empathy steady, sharing how my own doubts had felt like drowning in a dry riverbed, parched, endless, until I let the current carry me. Rural metaphors wove through our talks, grounding the chaos in the land we knew. "It's like the creek after freeze," I told her one evening as we walked the fence line, mud sucking at our boots, the air thick with pine and wet soil. Ice holds firm all winter, straight and unyielding, but spring comes, and it cracks. Water finds its way, hidden truths rushing free. She stopped, hand on a post, wind tugging her hair, and nodded slow, the words sinking in. Her fears eased a fraction, shared like the vast sky overhead. Endless, but not crushing. Physical closeness pulled us nearer still. Her leaning into me on the trail, arm brushing mine, the emotional bond tightening with every step. Judgments from afar faded against our quiet alliance, her breakdown forging something unbreakable. Yet the escalation built, tensions coiling like thunderheads on the horizon. Nights brought us closer, her slipping into my bed for comfort, bodies entwining in the dark, kisses tentative but deepening, her straight facade fully confronted now. Vulnerability met vulnerability, my open heart guiding her through the fears, empathy validating every tremor. But the revelations stirred a crisis, pulling us to the edge, external pulls warring with internal fire, setting up a confrontation that would demand everything. The cabin felt smaller, charged, as we teetered toward the peak. Those nights in my bed became our fragile sanctuary. her body curling into mine under the heavy quilts that smelled of cedar and sun-faded lavender. Lena slipped in after dark, the floorboards groaning soft under her steps, seeking the warmth we'd discovered. Intimate moments repeated, testing the boundaries we'd blurred that first kiss. Her hand tracing the curve of my hip, tentative at first, then bolder, fingers pressing into skin like claiming unmarked land. I'd respond, open, vulnerable, my breath catching as her lips found my neck, the scrape of her teeth, sending heat pooling low. No rush, just the slow build, her straight world fading further with each touch. The cabin's walls held our whispers, the wind outside a distant howl, but inside, tension coiled tight, her exploration pulling us deeper into uncharted ground. Her awareness grew sharp, like eyes adjusting to starlight after city glare. She'd pause mid-kiss, eyes searching mine in the dim glow from the window, confusion giving way to a dawning hunger. "This pull," she'd murmur against my collarbone, voice thick with the accidental truth. "It's like the river carving stone, slow but unstoppable." I felt it too, her attraction blooming accidental, genuine, cracking the assumptions she'd carried like a rucksack too heavy. Mornings after, she'd linger in bed, head on my chest, listening to my heartbeat, thud steady. The scent of her hair, hay and faint shampoo, filled the space, grounding us. I'd share fragments of my own attractions, vulnerable confessions of women who'd stirred me in quiet moments, fostering trust, brick by brick. Her hand would squeeze mine, the growing awareness, a bridge we crossed together, her straight facade dissolving in the light of day. But trust demanded vulnerability from me, laid bare in every shared breath. I'd pull back sometimes, not from doubt, but to let her lead, my heart open like the plains at dawn, exposed, waiting. "Tell me what you feel," I'd say, voice low, fingers tracing her arm, feeling the gooseflesh rise. She did, halting at first, then freer. The way my touch ignited something men never had, a spark that scared and thrilled. Empathy flowed easy, my own past vulnerabilities mirrored in her words, the fear of labels, the ache of hidden wants. Rural nights amplified it, stars pressing close through the skylight, no neighbors to intrude. Our bodies entwined again, her legs slipping between mine, the friction building slow, testing limits with every shift. I fostered that trust, holding her through the tremors, my openness, a steady flame against her storm. Conflicts from the conservative world outside clawed at the edges, like thorns snagging a fence line. Whispers started at the diner, her taking extra shifts to avoid them, coming home with eyes shadowed, tales of sidelong looks from the old-timers nursing coffee. "They sent some things off," she'd say, pacing the kitchen, the linoleum cool under her bare feet, the surroundings pressed in, Wyoming's wide skies hiding narrow minds, judgments rooted deep as sagebrush. One evening, a ranch hand stopped by for tools, his gaze lingering too long on how we stood close, her shoulder against mine. He grunted something about city ways creeping in, the words landing heavy. Lena stiffened, pulling away, the conflict stirring fresh doubt. I felt the gap widen, my vulnerability tested, but I bridged it with empathy, pulling her outside to the porch, where the dusk cooled the air, stars emerging one by one. "Their words are wind," I told her, hand in. "Hers, they pass. This doesn't." Emotional empathy wove us tighter, bridging the chasms her awakening carved. We'd walk the trails at twilight, boots crunching gravel, her hand swinging close to mine until it clasped firm. She'd confess the terror of it all, losing her family's approval, the isolation of Sapphic truths in this land of straight horizons. I'd listen, open, sharing how empathy had saved me once, a woman's understanding pulling me from my own brink. "We hold each other through it," I'd say, stopping to face her, the canyon wind tugging our hair. Her eyes softened, attraction flaring in the way she leaned in, lips brushing mine quick, testing the boundary again. Conflicts raged external, but our bond deepened, vulnerability, fostering a trust that felt like roots intertwining underground, unseen, but strong. Yet the moments piled, intimate and repeated, setting up the irreversible turn. One night, as thunder grumbled low, she pushed further, her hands exploring with a certainty that surprised us both, sliding under my shirt, palms warm on my back, pulling me atop her. The bed creaked, our breaths ragged, boundaries dissolving in the heat. Her awareness peaked, moaned soft against my ear, the accidental truth-demanding voice. "I want this," she whispered, eyes locked on mine, no denial left. My heart swelled, vulnerable and full, empathy sealing the gap. But the conservative shadows loomed larger, a call from home that night, reigniting fears, her body tensing under mine. The turning point hovered, crisis building like a storm cresting the ridge, peak intensity waiting, pulling us to the edge where everything would break or bind forever. Word count, 740. The storm broke that night, thunder cracking like the world splitting open. Lena lay beneath me, her body tense from the phone call earlier, her family's words echoing in the air between us, harsh, unyielding, like winter wind scouring the plains. She'd pulled away mid-touch, sitting up in the tangled sheets, her back to me, shoulders hunched. The room smelled of rain and our shared heat, the window streaked with water that blurred the lightning flashes outside. "I can't do this," she whispered, voice breaking. But it wasn't denial this time. It was the peak, the crisis, crashing full force. Her straight world, once a solid fence line, lay in ruins, and the self-revelation tore through her like roots bursting soil after thaw. I sat up too, heart pounding open, vulnerable in the dim light from the bedside lamp, its glow catching the sweat on her skin. "Then tell me what's real," I said, hand resting light on her arm, feeling the tremor run through her. No pressure, just the steady hold of empathy, waiting for her truth to surface. She turned then, eyes wild with the storm inside, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. "It's you," she choked out, the words raw, accidental truth spilling free at last. "This pull, this taste I couldn't forget. It's not curiosity, it's me. I've been straight my whole life, or thought I was, but kissing you, it woke everything. Women. You." Her confession hung heavy, full revelation crashing like the thunder outside, shaking the cabin's bones. I felt it hit me too, the weight of her shift, my own heart exposed in the convergence, sensory and deep, her hand clutching mine, nails digging in like anchors. The air thickened with our breaths, ragged and synced, the scent of her skin, salt and earth. Mixing with the ozone from the storm, she leaned in, desperate, lips crashing against mine in a kiss that held no hesitation, tongues tangling fierce, bodies pressing close on the bed that creaked under us. Heat surged, intense, her hands roaming my back, pulling me down, legs wrapping around mine in a tangle of need and release. We moved together then, the emotional peak fusing with the physical, her moans low against my neck, my fingers tracing the curve of her spine, feeling every shiver as confusion resolved into something tentative, true. Vulnerability poured from me, open acceptance in every touch, whispering her name like a vow. "I see you," I murmured between kisses, my body arching into hers, the friction building hot, urgent, like fire, racing through dry grass. She gasped, hips rising to meet mine, the revelation sealing us. Her straight assumptions burned away in this convergence, leaving only the Sapphic spark we'd ignited accidental. Sensory details overwhelmed, the slide of skin on skin, slick with sweat, the thud of my pulse in my ears matching hers, the rain pounding the roof like applause for her truth. No words needed now, just the raw empathy of bodies speaking what fears had silenced, her cries peaking sharp as lightning split the sky, pulling me over the edge with her. In the quiet after, breath slowing, she curled into my side, head on my chest, the storm easing to a steady patter. Confusion ebbed, resolving into tentative truth, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my stomach, a soft smile breaking through the tears. "This is real," she whispered, voice steadier, the accidental awakening, settling like dew on morning grass. I held her close. Open acceptance wrapping us, validating the journey we'd shared. No rush to define, just the quiet validation of her Sapphic path emerging. "We've got time," I said, kissing her forehead, empathy in every syllable, mirroring the resilience I'd found in my own loves. The shared Sapphic truth bound us, accidental but profound. Her hand in mine, a promise amid the lingering thunder. Quiet connection bloomed in that aftermath, the cabin a haven against the world's narrow winds. We lay there, bodies entwined, the air cooling around us, stars peeking through clouds outside. Her doubts flickered still, but the revelation had forged something solid, validation in the way she nuzzled closer, empathy in the silence we shared. No need for more words. The storm passed, leaving the land washed clean, and us connected deeper than before. Days after the storm, the cabin settled into a new rhythm, quieter but fuller, like the land after rain, everything sharper, roots digging deeper. Lena and I moved through our routines with a tentative closeness, hands brushing more often, eyes holding longer across the kitchen table. The dynamics shifted subtle, no grand declarations, just the weight of her revelation settling between us. She'd catch me watching her as she stacked wood by the shed, her arms flexing under the flannel shirt rolled to her elbows, and smile that half-shy way, the straight girl she'd been fading into memory. But acceptance came uneven, laced with doubts that surfaced like weeds after a wet spring. One morning, as I poured coffee, steam rising thick in the chill air, she leaned against the counter, fingers tracing the mug's edge. "What if this fades?" she asked, voice low, eyes on the black liquid swirling. The question hung, her lingering fears raw, pulling at the edges of her newfound truth. I set the pot down, turning to her, my heart open as always, vulnerability in the way I stepped close without hesitation. "It might shift," I said, hand finding her waist, thumb pressing gentle into the denim. "But we face it together. That's the real part." Empathy guided me, my role in her healing steady like mending a fence line, one post at a time. No rush, just presence. She nodded, leaning into my touch, her breath warm on my neck. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the doubts, whispering from her old life. The rural setting framed it all, the endless plains outside a backdrop for this slow growth, isolation forcing us inward where truths took root. We'd walk the trails at dawn, boots sinking into mud softened by recent rains, her hand slipping into mine, natural now, the vast sky overhead mirroring the space we gave her uncertainties. Out here, things grow slow, I'd say, squeezing her fingers, the wind carrying sage scent around us, like the cottonwoods by the creek, twisted but strong. Her acceptance built in layers, doubts surfacing in quiet confessions over shared chores. Afternoons in the garden, knees side by side in the dark soil, she'd pause with a trowel in hand, dirt caking her nails. "I dreamed of my sister last night," she'd murmur, the conservative judgments from that call still echoing. She called me lost. Her voice cracked, lingering fears pulling her under, but she'd look at me then, eyes searching, and I'd meet it with open arms, pulling her into a hug that smelled of earth and sweat. "You're found here," I'd whisper, chin on her shoulder, empathetic hold easing the ache. Healing came through those moments, my vulnerability a mirror for hers. No hiding my own past scars, the times I'd questioned everything under similar skies. The deepened bonds showed in small ways. Her cooking my favorite stew, rich with onions and herbs from our patch, or me braiding her hair by the fire, fingers combing through blonde strands, soft as new hay. Emotional ties thickened, her touches lingering longer, a kiss stolen in the pantry amid jars of preserves, sweet and urgent. The rural hush amplified our growth, no distractions from the world's noise, just us and the land's steady pulse. Evenings on the porch, wrapped in the same blanket, we'd watch the sun dip behind the ridges, painting everything in golds and shadows. Her doubts eased there, shared like the chill air, her head on my shoulder, breath steady, acceptance blooming quiet. "I like this us," she'd say one night, fingers interlaced with mine, the stars pricking the black above. Hopeful steps followed, her drafting a letter to her sister, words careful but honest, while I sat nearby, offering nods and silences that validated without words. Mutual understanding grew, brick by solid brick, her Sapphic awakening integrating slow, the accidental truth now a path we walked side by side. Conflicts from outside faded against our bond, like distant thunder after the storm, present, but not breaking us. Yet, the integration wasn't seamless, doubts flaring when isolation pressed too hard. A week later, alone with her thoughts during a long shift, she came home withdrawn, pacing the living room rug worn thin by our steps. "What if they find out at the diner?" she asked, arms crossed tight, the conservative undercurrents of Wyoming clawing back. I rose from the couch, pulling her close, bodies fitting familiar now, my hands on her back rubbing slow circles. "Then we face it," I replied, voice soft against her hair, empathy pouring steady. "I'm here, open to whatever comes." She melted into me, doubts yielding to the warmth, our kiss deepening on the spot, lips parting, tongues meeting with a hunger that chased shadows away. Healing deepened in those empathetic holds, my role anchoring her through the rural vastness, bonds strengthening like vines, twisting up a trellis. As weeks turned, hopeful steps solidified, planning a trip to the nearest town with a queer-friendly bar, her hand in mine, as we talked dreams under the quilt. Mutual understanding wrapped us, validation in every shared glance, the journey from her straight assumptions to this Sapphic connection, a testament to time's quiet work. The cabin felt fuller, our dynamics a dance of give and take, doubts lingering but no longer defining. Transitioning to resolution came natural, the land outside mirroring our steady progress, fields greening, skies clearing, us rooted deeper in each other. Sunlight filtered through the cabin window that morning, catching the dust motes dancing slow between us. Lena stirred beside me in bed, her arm draped over my waist, breath warm on my shoulder. We lay there, bodies tangled easy, the quiet connection we'd built holding firm against any lingering winds. No words needed, just the steady rise of her chest against mine, the Sapphic truth we'd uncovered together, settling like morning dew, validating every step of her journey. Empathy lingered in the air, thick, the scent of pine outside, a reminder that awakening doesn't come clean, but it comes real. If you've ever navigated those hidden pulls in your own life, felt the ground shift under assumptions you held tight, drop your story in the comments below. It might help someone else find their way. And if these tales of rural hearts and quiet revelations resonate, subscribe for more. Stories of women finding home in each other, one accidental truth at a time.